In 1933, Marion C. Cooper and Willis O'Brien brought to life one of the most iconic movies ever made, King Kong. Right after the Great Depression, this film was made, and it's definitely a very important movie that really inspired Hollywood as a whole, and was the beginning of a new genre with a very original story, and really the first kaiju flick that came out at the time. This movie was really good. I finished watching it. I haven't seen it in absolutely forever. I don't even know if I've ever sat through a whole version of this. And this is my first time sitting through it. And this movie was amazing. It's very quick. It's a spectacle. It's amazing. It's very fast-paced. You spend a lot of this movie, the first 40 minutes, with the human characters. You know, we meet characters such as Anne, Jack, and Carl Denham. All three are our main characters in the movie. The cast isn't very wide, but like later versions of the movie, we mostly focus on these three characters, and all three are great. And to some extent, it's kind of like the weak length of the movie. But Carl Denham really builds this whole thing around her with the Beauty and Beast thing, as both Jack, the big tough guy, kind of gives in and falls for her, and so does King Kong, obviously. That's the big theme of this movie with the whole Beauty and the Beast thing. And with Carl Denham, he is a director looking to make a new movie, and he picks up Anne along the way, and they head to a voyage to Skull Island to film a new movie. And on the way, they meet the tribal people, and this is where the movie really begins to pick up. We see development as Jack and Anne kind of have, it seems like they're opposing, but eventually they end up falling for each other, and it kind of develops over the run of the movie. And then we get on it, and in this version, it really interests me, because Carl Denham didn't seem as much of, like, the greedy, slime ball that I would say Jack Black's portrayal really gave off. He didn't seem as much of, like, just a greed ball. He definitely felt more like a character and wasn't, like, willing to just hurt everyone, per se, just for some bucks. And he honestly, I really liked his character in this movie. It was definitely an interesting portray. Jack and Anne, they both kind of develop over time, with Jack at first saying he hates women and stuff, basically, and then he ends up just falling for Anne anyways. And then Anne kind of falls for him, too. She doesn't get a lot of development in this movie, but she was still played amazingly. And I did, all this happens around the 40-minute mark. This is when she gets kidnapped, and this is when we finally get to meet Kong. And this is where the movie really picks up from here with non-stop action. I was so surprised growing up, since I grew up with Peter Jackson 1, how quick this film moves. The moment she gets kidnapped, all in the short span of time, around the halfway point, we end up getting a Stegosaurus scene, a Bronto chase from the water to the thing. We see the tree scene, the iconic tree scene where a bunch of the men get thrown to the pit, this time all of them basically getting killed. Then immediately the T-Rex fight, that's iconic, which I love the brutal aftermath of. And Kong going into this thing with Anne. And then immediately they're chasing them out. That's when Kong gets knocked out and taken to New York. And eventually just knocked off the tower and dies. And it's the Empire State Building. It moves so quickly. I love the fact that it felt so perfectly paced. It wasn't too slow, it wasn't too fast. However, with this great speedy pace that's fast-paced, there's only one downfall with it. I think it really hurt with some of the characters' development throughout the movie. I feel like some of them could have definitely been developed a lot more. It definitely left room open for Carl Denham to be, I believe, really the big main one to be developed, which, when we get into the sequel, we'll discuss. And it was really interesting. I think, like I said, though, they could have been a little bit more developed throughout the movie, but they were still really fun characters nonetheless. But the only downfall with the humans, really, to me, in the Kong, is the fact that none of the humans really sympathize with Kong. Everyone's kind of against him. Kong's kind of by himself. And this is all throughout the movie, even the famous Empire State Building scene. And I feel like that was something that kind of bugged me about the movie. Anne was just screaming the whole time. It was just a damsel in distress. She never got any time to like really gain any feelings for Kong. She was scared of him the whole time, and Jack was against him the whole time. And Kong was just kind of on his own, and the only people that really felt for him was the audience. However, let's talk about this Kong. This Kong is amazing. I love him. He's brutal. He's strong. I love how clever he was when he fought the T-Rex, climbing on his back, and how devastating the aftermath of him, like, killing the T-Rex was. You see just how brutal it looked. Him destroying the village. That was such a great scene. I was so surprised whenever he broke out and destroyed the village. I love that. And he was just such a lost animal in New York, and I loved it. This is definitely, like, possibly my favorite King Kong design. I really love the Kong Skull Island design, but man, I really love the King Kong design in this movie. And a lot of the stuff with the monsters too, a lot of the design set pieces, most of them were all just prehistoric creatures. Not too many of them were like made up. It was mostly prehistoric creatures, which was a nice touch with a mixture of kind of like realism and also at the same time, bringing these creatures back from the past that were once alive but not now, but on this mysterious island, anything is possible. And I really did enjoy that element of the movie. I love a lot of stuff with the monsters. One thing I noticed is that about any time the monsters are on screen, there's always a human in frame, which really gives a really good size scale for you guys to get a perspective of how big the monsters are compared to the humans. There's always seemed to be like a human in frame with them, and a lot of it is just amazing. It's very fast-paced. Like I said, the action is really great in this film. I loved all of it. I loved how they introduced this gas bomb thing at the beginning of the movie, and they definitely concluded with it. And it's a very amazing movie. Definitely highly recommend it. I was actually really intrigued and surprised with how much I really enjoyed this movie for like almost basically my first viewing in years, and possibly my first full viewing ever. It was a really fun ride. I was surprised how fast it moved and how great it was. My only main complaint, like I mentioned earlier, is just simply the fact that none of the humans really characterized with Kong. But this film was made in a different period of history, so that could possibly be why. And it wasn't really till like the 70s where we really got to see that kind of change. I really would have, especially if Anne would have been more with him. Just everyone wanted him to die. No one really cared for him. And he had one of the most brutal deaths, in my opinion, in this movie. Like, his fall from the Empire State Building looked just like the most brutal out of all of them. Him hitting all the things on the way down. It's just, it wasn't as impacting since no one cared for him, which could be impacting on its own. But I think something like some of the other incarnations do is whenever the humans actually like care for them, you get to see this relationship build between them, and it's a lot more beautiful, I think, with some of those. But that's like the only complaint I have with this movie, and that's just a small one. Some people might disagree with me and personally enjoy it that it's him against the world, and think that's more sad that this woman who doesn't even care for him, he's just going around sacrificing himself trying to protect her. Kong's literally letting himself get killed and stuff. He's doing everything he can to protect this woman who's just scared of him and wants him just probably to be gone, just like everything else. She has no feelings for him. Nothing at all. And, that in its own could be kind of impactful that he's just willing to sacrifice himself to do that. But personally, I kind of like the portrayal where it's really devastating to her and whoever else really cares for him. I really like that portrayal. Other than that, though, in my opinion, this movie, definitely, I can see why it's one of the greatest movies of all time. It's fun. It's action-packed. You'll really love it. Love the King Kong movie. The score was amazing. Done by Max Steiner. And Willis O'Brien's stop-motion effects were amazing. And I really love this movie. And it definitely opened up a pathway and then the whole new genre. And it definitely made me really love the character of King Kong more. I really did enjoy this movie. Highly recommend it. I don't know if there's any English colored versions out there. I just watched classic black and white, but I know there are colored versions out there that are really good looking too, and I'd really like to see an English version of this movie. Just even if it's like tonight, just rewatch it in color. It's so good. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this review. And, what do we give this film? I'm going to give this film a 4.5 out of 5. I highly recommend it. It's a great movie. You won't be disappointed. And thank you all for joining. And on to the next one. Our next one is Son of Kong, and soon after, we'll begin with the Godzilla stuff. Thank you all for watching. As always, peace. Bye-bye.